Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Season 2 premiere of Reginald the Vampire. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have our angels just casually strolling up, because I guess that's where Season 1 ended off, because I completely forgot about the angel storyline. But it's like, okay, it's good we brought that up, because I was like, right, so that's what ties into Sarah's stuff, which I'm curious with the angels' appearance, and especially them, or at least one being connected to Sarah and wanting to protect Sarah, and how her family's connected to that. You know, that was a one episode thing, like I think when her brother was here, and like how that all played out. So I could still see that being something that kind of drags her back towards that. I would assume with the angel's appearance that element of her story will come back around with her family, and especially if word got out and if someone from her family found out about the angels, that probably like whipped that whole situation to a frenzy. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, they were they're there to kill Reginald. They're also looking for the spawn of somebody, which I'm like, that's not going to be like Claire or something, right? She is still like the biggest enigma from season 1. Her and her mom, like whatever that situation is, we have no idea. But I'm curious if like Claire's the person they're looking for, because they're here for two things: to kill Reginald and to deal with like some spawn of some being. I don't even remember the name off the top of my head. Which I'm like, well, we don't really know too much about Claire and her mom's circumstances, so you know. Maybe it's because her powers aren't continuously activated. They don't know. They can't even begin to look. To be fair, she didn't even show up at the slushy place. Like, that's mainly been, like, they've been in town, but that's their main go-to place, because one of the angels just constantly loves getting the slushies, because he became obsessed with them. In particular, he really likes the one that Reginald also likes. So, but yeah, like, the other angel, I think his name was Raphael, was kind of like, yeah, we need to kill Reginald, which we haven't done that, because his existence is a danger. I guess it's like, well, they plan on wiping out all vampires because they look at them as monstrosities, but I guess like Reginald's circumstances kind of like throws a wrench in the equilibrium that things are. That's why I'm kind of confused. I'm like, well, you're planning on killing all vampires, but I guess him having the very special case that he is someone who can glamour other vampires, makes him a very special, dangerous case that he could be like kind of like the chosen one that rallies the vampires and become an even bigger issue than they already are, even more of a blight against humanity. Maybe that's the argument, but yeah, they have their mission, but the one other angel is just kind of like, yeah, he's fascinated with this world, you know, but it's like, hey, staying on this world, the other angel, Raphael, was kind of like, yeah, it will corrupt you and it will eat away your soul, but he doesn't care. So that's why the other angel's like, yeah, I gotta kill Sarah, because she's the one that polluted you and corrupted you. Does beg some big questions about angels in this continuity, you know, obviously pulling from Supernatural, of the TV show. Are like the way they look, is that how they actually look, or is it kind of like Supernatural where it's like, hey, our form is so unknowable, unfathomable, that looking at it will basically burn your eyes out and kill you, because you're not supposed to look at what we really look like? Wasn't there some other thing that did that too besides Supernatural? It wasn't even just angels. Wasn't it like something else did that with gods? Did and like, oh, you can't see a god's real form because it'd be too much? Wasn't Percy Jackson, was it? I don't think it was. I swear something else did that with gods, but maybe I'm just associating that with purely Supernatural, and I'm just kind of like trying to equate that to something else. But I'm curious of like the way they look in their forms and stuff like that, like how they present themselves. Is that actually how they look like in heaven, or what? You know? Questions like that, you know, because kind of like how, like, very much like Lucifer in that regard, where it's just like, yeah, that's not them inhabiting any bodies. That's just like, yeah, that's just what they look like. If I remember correctly, I don't think that ever came up that like there was anything weird about the way they look when they came to Earth. I'm like, I think that's just their angel form. That's just how they are, celestials. So stuff like that is kind of what's kind of coursing through my mind in that regard. But other elements to the episode, we have Reginald trying to obviously fix things between him and Sarah. But obviously for her, it's like, right, kind of had to deal with this whole religious cult thing with my family. Then I got mixed up in the middle of a vampire war, and it's like, I need my life to be chill for a second. But Reginald was like, right, I just want her to see that, like, you know, when it comes to I love you, it starts with I and it ends with you, which I'm like, I'm sure that's like super cliche line, but I was like, I don't think I've ever heard that one before. I was like, that one's good. It's super cheesy and it's super like, ugh, but I'm like, I don't care. You know, I'm a sucker for romance and love, so I'm like, yeah. But I'm like, oh, I really like that one. Like I said, that was probably super cliche. It's probably very like, oh, everyone uses that line. You know, like the whole like cliche ones, like, oh, are you an angel? Because it must have hurt when you fell. Did it hurt? And it's like, what? When you fell from heaven. You know, I butchered that multiple, but you get what I'm saying. Like, is it a cliche line like that? Because that was the first time I'd ever heard it. Either way. So he's got to balance that. He's also trying to convince Maurice to like lean into being a deacon, but he's not too. Sure, he wants to help out, but it's also like, yeah, I'm not the sit on a throne ceremony type of person like Logan is, because it also saw like what that does to you. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, but the thing is, you can't let anyone else have the throne, especially Angela. It's like, nah, I'm not going to do that, because there's a line between, you know, justice and power, and it's like some people, you can't trust them with power to, you know, enact justice. Sometimes they're separate things, sometimes they can be the same thing. Angela wants to pretend like they can be, but it's like, no, with you, there wouldn't be no justice, it'd just be you about power, especially because she's tripping and so upset because she lost her mansion, because it's supposed to be like her like penance for the whole being a part of, well, at least, you know, the whole Logan getting murdered thing last season, and now she has to like can't use any supernatural means of bettering her own life. It's meant to kind of teach her a lesson, so she's kind of having to squalor like the rest of everyone else. It's kind of her issue. So I'm trying to remember, did her and Maurice get back together last season? I didn't remember that. So when she was laying in bed, I was like, when did you get back together? It's like, well, maybe that happened. Once again, I do have some blank spots when it comes to last season. So I remember some stuff, but not a lot. So I was wondering, I was like, I don't think that was set up last season. So to be fair, we did get like a month time skip between the beginning of, I think because the beginning of the episode, it's like immediately where the season 1 finale ended, I believe, and now like we skipped to like a month later, so that could have just been something that happened in those 30 days. But anyway, like going back to it, Reginald wants Maurice to try and help shift the way that the vampire world works. It's like, right, it's always kind of like only like, you know, it's the social hierarchy that it has, you know, based on like, oh, those who are conventional and pretty, and you know, it's like we let like such shallow things dictate a lot of like the hierarchy in the vampire world. It's like we could make it better. We could make some kind of equilibrium. We could change the vampire world for the better, not just for us, but for the world in general. There could be something greater for that, and that's kind of the angle that Reginald's pushing, while also trying to teach Claire how to use her powers, which it's still unclear, like, yeah, how did that happen? Still don't know. I figured as much because, like, her mom was not on screen at all, but she was talked about. But then, like, we actually get to see her on screen this time, and she just magically has a puppy. It's like, and her mom being like, oh, yeah, it came out of thin air, or something like. It seems like her mom knows about whatever their circumstances are, her mom knows. Because later on, she's wanting to talk to Claire about, like, all the... It's like, oh, yeah, like, anything weird and stuff like that. Claire's like, yeah, you kind of need a parent to kind of navigate that. And Claire's mom's like, yeah, like, she's like, oh, it feels like I've been in bed for a year. Like, she's been sick. She even, like, Claire had brought it up to Reginald about the whole, like, yeah, there's this thing visiting my mom. He's like, well, why didn't you tell me? She's like, to be fair, like... Nikki was going to handle it. She smelled sulfur around my mom, but then you and Nikki blew up, and that was a mess. She was going to turn me into a vampire so I could help fight the thing that's coming to visit my mom. Once again, that's the biggest enigma of what's that's about. So that's why I'm also leaning into the second thing, that Spawn or yada, 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 that the Angels are also here for, their second target. Not less the thing that's coming to Claire's mom is the thing, or is Claire herself the thing? You know, that's the big question. Maybe once again, maybe Claire's circumstances are just all in its own, and the Angel's second mission is a completely separate storyline thing. I do feel bad for Reginald, really quickly, that life didn't work out. Well, his love life didn't work out the way he wanted it to, because despite him trying to, you know, well, go big or go home, try to make like a big like gesture, which even Claire was like, maybe talk to her first like a normal person. But he's like, when did that get anyone anywhere? So he put on his big spectacle and he tried to sing, and I was like, oh right, I completely forgot, your singing is horrible, except Nikki's the only person that seems to like it. But I wonder, I'm trying to, does she actually just naturally like your singing? Or does she kind of like, is it that thing of like, oh, I'm so in love with you and I'm love at first sight that I ignore your horrendous singing because it's coming from you and it's perfect? Or does she legitimately just like Reginald singing? I completely forgot about that whole element until he started singing. I was like, oh, right, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that went completely and just, it was a giant, manifestation and representation of just the metaphor that is Reginald's life, and it kind of plays into the whole reason why Sarah's like, yeah, I just kind of want to be friends right now. Your life is a little, the chaos of all this, I can't really handle that right now. And so Reginald reluctantly kind of accepts because she's like, can we just be friends? And because she's like, right, like, I know there's a lot of good reasons why we should be together, but it's like, I want to figure my life out first, because it's like, I don't want to be like making slushies for the rest of my life. It's like, I've got to figure my stuff out. So Reginald's like, right, on one hand it sucks, but on the other hand, he's like, I can find a way to adapt to that. And she's like, oh, like, I know you're lying. He's like, okay, it's not the easiest thing, but I can change and I will change. So that is kind of like the sucky friend zone situation. But who knows what the future holds? Never know. Things could change in the future where like they could become something else again, or maybe it's just a thing of we both kind of have to move on. We'll see how they handle that going forward. Speaking of other relationships, circling back over to speaking of Nikki, her and Ashley are in an interesting spot where Ashley's kind of pointing out the differences of, yeah, I'm a human and you're a vampire. I make like slushies. You are an assassin that murders people. But Nikki was willing to put all that aside. It's like, yeah, there are differences, but it's like, you are this to me. You are the sun. And I never thought I'd ever feel that again. I was like, oh, that's so romantic and sweet. So it's like, yeah, I'll give up killing and stuff like that for you. Like, love is good enough reason to do that. Until the other angel showed up and it was like, hey, I need you to kill an angel because angels can't kill angels. We can, but the moment I do it, it's going to send off some like alarms and radar. So it's like, let's not do that. So it's like, well, Nikki's old enough because she's like, isn't Nikki like 300? So she's aware of angels. She just never met one until now. She did say like up close, which I wonder, has she seen one from far away? That was interesting too. I guess maybe just her natural, because also she's been around the block a few times, so she would know how to sense an angel. Because I was like, I'm wondering, like, is Maurice too young? Would Angela be able to sense an angel? Because obviously Reginald definitely can't, even though like two are literally standing in front of him multiple times throughout the show. But either way, Nikki was kind of reluctant. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I made a promise to like my partner, the person I love, that I'm not going to kill. But when an angel presents you the opportunity to kill an angel, and it's like, well, how would I even go about it? Flaming sword of justice, which is also interesting to note that they all have, it seems like all the angels have flaming swords. They don't all have like unique weapons to them. It's like, oh, at least from what we've seen. We've only seen 2 angels so far who have flaming swords, so it could be others have it. Feels very like Highlander-ish, but it also kind of reminds me of Supernatural because like there were angel blades in that. They weren't flaming swords, but they were like kind of large daggers that could kill demons and a lot of supernatural creatures, so kind of gave me that same vibe, which Nikki later on does kill the guy Raphael, which also maybe plays into like, obviously it doesn't play like Supernatural where it's like, oh, we're inhabiting a human body or anything like that. It doesn't follow supernatural rules in that capacity, because when the angel died, it just disappeared. It's like, I guess he was like dead, but I think that's interesting that he just vanished, but also the other angel's sword that Nikki had also vanished once the deed was done. So you'd also assume there'd be repercussions for a vampire killing. Maybe that's also why Home Dude was kind of like fine with her doing it, because it's like, yeah, you do that. Not unless that was Home Dude summoning his sword back, but it disappeared the same way the angel disappeared. So it makes you wonder, like, do those weapons disappear, or like, do they just find their way back to heaven and get added back to the flaming sword armory or whatever the case may be? But yeah, like Ashley, the moment Ashley was investigating the 2 weirdos and was following them, I'm like, yep, you knew exactly where that storyline was going, that she was going to stumble across Nikki murdering the angel. It's like, yeah, you made a promise not to kill and you did it. And then also you try to wipe her memory, which she immediately stopped you from compelling her, which is like, yeah, that's kind of a no-go. Like, there was already a strike against you in that moment. You immediately got another strike, which is sad, too, considering, like, well, the last relationship she was in was with Reginald, and that was a hot mess. So you're almost like, oh, kind of like a second strike for Nikki, but you hope that's not the case. Maybe they can find some way forward, but it's like, yeah, it looks like the love life situation is kind of not working out for a lot of people in this situation, so in this episode, so. Oh yeah, we also found out what Maurice is spending his time doing. He's doing the whole vigilante thing, which is interesting because I love that later on Reginald made a reference to him. It's like, yeah, I get it. You can do the Deacon thing during the day, Bruce Wayne, and at night become Batman, which is so interesting because when he was talking to Angela and Reginald about what he was doing, when he showed him, like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. Yes, it might not be on a larger scale of what I could do as a deacon, but it still makes me feel good. It still feels like this is justice. The way he was saying stuff, I was like, okay, Batman. It sounded like some shit Batman would say. So definitely got those vibes. I mean, nighttime vigilante, your go-to will always end up being Batman. Oh yeah, like when it came to talking about Claire and her mom, there was that weird lady that showed up, which Claire kept asking her mom, was like, do you know her? It's like, no, she's just some weirdo sitting down. And I'm like, yeah, that's something. I don't know if that's just, there's stuff like her mom like wants to tell Claire, but she's like, I need to be sure you're ready for it. So like, what stuff has happened? What have you experienced already? So maybe I can fill in some gaps. But I even love Claire being like, oh yeah, I feel a little like Snow White, because it's like, yeah, she did come at you like the evil queen. But I'm like, yeah, that definitely looked like she was just like creepy and stuff. You're like, what is that about? I doubt we've seen the end of that because she just randomly strolled up. Probably could have popped up to anywhere, but she popped up specifically in front of those two. Claire and her mom specifically was talking to them. Makes you wonder, Claire's mom's got to have some powers too, because I was talking about before, like, oh, magically popped up a puppy out of nowhere. Like, what the fuck is that? Also, is she still getting visited by whatever it is at night? Or has that stopped now that she's gotten better? Is this thing visiting her the reason why she's gotten better? So many questions on that front. Like I said, continues to be the biggest enigma in this story. We also have Reginald having some nightmares of his own where he's constantly getting visited by a guy, which I can only assume, like, are you an angel? Are you an archangel? Are you, like, some hierarchy? Some heavy hitter in heaven or whatever? Considering, like, you're going on and on about Reginald being an abomination, the monsters. It's like, right, you were once a decent human being. Your father's a human being, but look at the abomination that he has. It's like, yes, I might have gotten turned into this thing, but I thought it was beautiful how Reginald eventually stood up for himself. It was like, the fact is that, yes, you know, is it really that bad that, like, oh, I can't go out in the daylight? Because he's trying to put it as, because of your sins, you can't even go out in the daylight. It's like, well, to be fair, it's like, I could go out in the daylight, but it will kill me. But the argument could be like, oh, because of your sins. But it's like, well, what sins did Reginald commit necessarily, even before he really did much as a vampire? It's actually interesting, too, because it's like, I don't know how many vampire stories really go into the lore of why vampires are immune to daylight. Like, some stuff does, I feel like. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. I'd expect something like a Vampire Diaries to have covered that, simply because it's like a lot of, obviously vampirism is very like entrenched in magic in that universe. They really lean into like the magic elements of like the supernaturals in that universe, so I'd assume there's like magic based reasons behind that. There might have been something they covered in any three of the shows, Vampire Diaries, Legacies, or the original. Should have flipped that around in the chronological order, but regardless, maybe it's something that was covered in any of those shows and I just don't remember. But Reginald was kind of making this point that he felt like, he's like, I know it's ironic and weird to say, but I do feel like I become a better person upon becoming a vampire. Like, it started off crappy, but it's like, yeah, it's like, but because of all of this, you know, he's become like a better friend, a better person. Even saying like, yes, I still have my hunger, but he was kind of making the whole point of just like, that doesn't mean like I only when I give into it do I become a monster. Just, yes, I still have my need for blood and stuff like that. That's just survival. Like, any creature has its need to survive. Will you damn any other creature for needing to eat to survive? It's like, yeah, you know, only difference is I drink human blood and stuff, so. But it's like, yeah, only when I give into those like darker instincts, give into my hunger, do I become a monster. But until then, I'm just me. So I thought that was neat. But he keeps getting warned over and over by the guy who's like, oh, I like you, Reginald, but the fact is, it's going to be that much more sorrowful that I have to put you down because you're an abomination. You actually do more harm to the world than good. There's even the ending where he gets consumed or surrounded by those azure flames. So I guess that's supposed to be like heavenly fire or something like that. I'd assume that's what that's supposed to be, so some very interesting developments, kind of getting us back into the world of Reginald the Vampire, but also setting up a lot of stuff for this season. It's going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.